silhouettes are more iconic in science fiction than an X-pattern set of wings. But this is no X-Wing. This, instead, is the new Scorpius from RSI in Star Citizen. And it's the topic of today's Architect Reviews. Hey guys, Morphologist here, and welcome back to another episode where, as always, I'll utilize my experience in the field of architecture to examine something in the digital realm. Today's topic is a ship that borrows heavily from the iconic design that we know from Star Wars, which has made yet another superb entry in the Star Citizen lineup of heavy fighters. But is the design too derivative, and could it be considered stepping over the line into the realm of plagiarism? Or has CIG's designers gone far enough to make it their own? Whatever the case, one thing you should consider making your own is the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN, which now not only helps you hide your IP from prying eyes, but goes a step further with their new threat protection service. It works against intrusive ads, malware, trackers, and malicious websites, and I've already personally been using them for years after getting fed up with dealing with free VPN services that might actually be selling my personal information and didn't even really work. Without them, I actually wouldn't be able to do my job where I need to access IP-restricted websites, and I can also now use them on my iPad to help me watch shows like Strange New Worlds, which isn't available in Taiwan. By the way, that show is awesome. So if you're looking for a reliable VPN service and you want to support me while you're doing it, you can head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist to get a huge discount on a 2-year plan and get an additional month free. Oh, and if none of this really works for you, you can always get your money back with their 30-day money-back guarantee. So it probably just can't be avoided. Let's first tackle the design before moving on to the function and specifications of the Scorpius. As much as this ship resembles other science fiction ships like the Star Fury from Babylon 5, if we're speaking honestly here, then it has to be the X-Wing that the Scorpius is most inspired by. However, before you call it plagiarism, I think that the Scorpius presents an excellent opportunity to talk about the design process and how successful designs like the X-Wing can and should influence good designers. So first, a little bit of background. Design is a really difficult field. Like other jobs, it has a clear beginning when you have your initial meeting with your client or boss to outline the goals of the project, the design goals as we might call them. But that middle part and end part can be the real killer. That's because it's hard to know how long it actually takes to create a truly great design. While objectively bad designs do exist, looking at you, Starfarer, it's harder to pin down exactly what constitutes good or great design, and that can make it really hard to find the right direction to go as a designer. Frustratingly, in design, there isn't a perfect mathematical equation or process that we can use to find a sure solution. So then it may seem a bit counterintuitive when I say that more restrictive design goals, or constraints, can actually generate more innovative solutions. While I'm not a psychologist, I think the reason behind this is that without any constraints, we can go in pretty much any direction. And so choosing a direction to go can be really difficult, especially with the stress of a meeting or deadline on the horizon, and those expectations that your client or boss might have. So many designers can find themselves spinning their wheels, unable to proceed. And that's where precedence can help. As a designer, one of the first things you'll learn as part of the process is to look at precedents. In other words, designs that already exist and that check the boxes of the design goals for your project. These precedents might include things like size, feeling, color, emotion, etc., and it can get pretty abstract. But generally, the precedent that you want to find almost always includes a direct example of something similar to your project. So, for example, if I want to design a really great library in a forest, I'll look for designs of libraries and forests that have already been built to get me started. Now, obviously, there's a danger here in becoming too derivative and coming off as uninspired, or at worst, you might be accused of plagiarism. And that's where the rest of a designer's process comes in. A good designer will take bits and pieces of their precedent to help them inform the design, while taking into consideration things like context and other hard restraints that might influence the project, like regulations that require certain sizes for things, or in SC's case, it's CIG's design metrics which define the size of modules, characters, and their animations. So keeping that in mind, let's take a closer look at the Scorpius and determine whether or not it's plagiaristic or too derivative of the X-Wing. Well, here you can see that the designers actually have clearly, in my mind, made this ship their own, especially in its landed mode. Here, the design becomes more reminiscent of other ships in Star Citizen, especially those in the existing RSI ship lineup, like the Aurora. In fact, much of the design cues along the wings, the angular hull, the thruster cones, and even more broadly the shape language of the fuselage all show strong relationships with the RSI Aurora lineup. Stepping a bit closer, the new metrics set by CIG's earlier ship designs can also be seen here to be artfully considered. Components are arrayed sensibly in a fashion that seems as if it should have been designed this way, which is a good sign that it's successful. And they've considered the ergonomics of these modules, tactfully placing things like the gun racks and personal storage just below the cockpit for immediate ease of access. I also really love the integration of the missile rack into the hull, a newer trend that I hope that they continue with other ships. It certainly makes it a lot more sleek when looking at the design. On the rear, the ship's design is dominated by its 4 engine pods attached to the folding X-Wings. Clearly, this is somewhat inspired from Ralph McQuarrie, the original designer of the X-Wings, X-Wing. But the execution is unique enough to say that I think it becomes its own ship. The engines, in fact, may be more inspired by the Mantis engines than anything else. Take a look. Stepping on board, the interior features are a bit more contemporary when it comes to the RSI design language. There are notably fewer struts, which is a welcome cue from the more recent RSI Mantis. I particularly love the more minimal semi-transparent MFD displays, along with the wraparound canopy that gives more visibility to the pilot for below the ship. This certainly assists with tricky landings. I also really like that the co-pilot is seated directly behind the pilot in the same cabin. It's almost as if we could talk to each other if that were a thing. Well, it is a thing. You can use VoIP, but most people are just using Discord. You get what I'm saying. Overall then, I really love the design of this ship. There's something really special about seeing its silhouette, especially in a fight or while skimming across the surface of Daymar. It feels fun to fly. I mean, whenever someone sees it, they're like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool ship. And I think that CIG, like I said, have made it their own. So it looks pretty darn cool, but does it perform as well as it looks? Shifting over to the specifications, the Scorpius is classified as a heavy fighter, which is optimally operated by 2. As such, it boasts a much more impressive set of components, matching others in its class with a single size 2 shield generator, 2 size 1 power plants, 2 size 1 coolers, and a size 1 quantum drive. More impressive though is its remote turret operated by a co-pilot that boasts 4 size 3 weapons and the ability to shift the turret's position. The Pilot 2 has some serious firepower behind the trigger, boasting 4 size 3 hardpoints, coming stock with 4 size 2 gimbaled weapons. Best practice though is to use the gimbaled weapons, as in the case of this ship the convergence is pretty difficult. So fixed is something that you best leave for when you're specifically targeting larger targets. And finally, it has a good complement of 16 size 2 missiles, which do well against small targets. All of this means that out of the box, the Scorpius is a formidable ship that can make quick work of medium and light fighters, and it's even capable of taking out larger ships if the pilots are extra careful. In terms of handling, it also feels lighter than it looks, and is one of the fastest ships in the game, especially in atmosphere. However, despite this, its current form is let down by poor engine acceleration. This translates into poor PvP performance against metaships such as the Vanguard or the Arrow. This means that while you will probably be able to kill some inexperienced players who get too close, more experienced players will leverage their acceleration advantage to dictate the distance of engagement, meaning that you'll have little chance to take advantage of all that firepower. This renders the Scorpius pretty difficult to use in PvP, but hopefully this will soon change with a balance pass in a coming patch. One other thing you might be curious about is its turret's ability to change positions. While it's a pretty cool feature and works in theory, right now it's more of a gimmick than anything else. With flight mechanics being as they are, it's unnecessary for the gunner to reposition the turret to the rear, as the pilot can much more practically just yaw roll the ship to get them in position to get on target, even if they're being followed. This might change in atmosphere when flipping and firing is far more difficult, but that makes it a very situational use at best. So in short, the design of the Scorpius is fantastic. It's exciting to use and even more exciting to witness in combat. However, despite its great design and on paper great firepower, its performance is let down by poor engine acceleration performance, which leads it to being an inferior ship in the current meta. This may and will likely soon change, but for now, you might want to look to other options if your goal is PvP. However, the story changes quite a lot when you bring this thing into PvE, where it is an absolute monster. In fact, it may be one of the best options in the game right now to run high-level bounty missions with a friend. So if that's your goal with this ship, this may be the ship for you. But what do you think? Is its good design, nimble nature, and prowess at PvE enough for you to overlook its poor performance in PvP? Or is the fact that it's out of the meta a deal breaker for you? Or could it be that you just don't like the design? Whatever the case may be and whatever your thoughts and feelings are, I want to know about them down in the comment section below. Anyway guys, that's all for now, and don't forget, if you're looking for a great VPN service and you want to support the channel, head on over to nordvpn.com/morphologist to get a deal on that 2-year plan. Hope to see you out there in the verse.